Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 24th annual SF Indie Fest. Still living in these kind of weird film festival times, but we're lucky enough to have some great films from all around the world and have some filmmakers that can kind of join us virtually here to do some Q&As. You've just had a chance to see the wonderful film, Have a Nice Life. And with it, we have director-writer Prashanth Kamalakanthan. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I always figure a good place to kind of start here is like, what it kind of inspired you to kind of put, pen to paper, or, sit in front of the computer and you're like, this is like, what was the kind of inspiration for the story?
Yeah, so this was my graduate thesis at NYU a few years back when I was studying for my MFA. And it was a very organic process through which this came about. I'd kind of reached the end of the master's program, and I'd had a few scripts that I'd written that I still really love and hope to make one day as films. But, just coming out of film school felt like we didn't have too much access to resources. And so I wanted to write something that, we could shoot within specifically the graduate thesis period, because we had access to all this equipment, student labor, insurance, all these kinds of things. Also the ability to crowdfund and say, hey, like, would you kick in some money to my thesis film production is a very different kind of ask than, hey, I'm an adult man trying to make a film, help me out. So I think a lot of things were aligning at that time. And so when I started to think about ideas that I had, and I have like this big folder of movie ideas that I'm constantly adding to and cultivating. And I've always kind of been fascinated with road trips, and there's just something so uniquely American about the experience of taking a road trip and spending so much time on the road. I mean, Americans, this is like statistically true, spend way more time in their cars and on roads than any other people in the world. I think Canada is kind of like close up there, but we're really in a league of our own. And definitely being an immigrant to this country as a kid and moving around a lot. I mean, that was the way I learned the society in this country and this culture, was just by watching it kind of whiz by on the highway. So I was thinking about stories from back home, people and places that I knew I had access to, and kind of a process of both mining my own past experience, like kind of the weird immigrant experience of growing up as a first generation Indian immigrant artist in North Carolina, as I did, and also just like the weird kind of aspects of that experience that I just felt like were never captured on film before. I mean, I think another thing about making a first feature is that I just was like, went into it with a real awareness of all the limitations, and I kind of also an understanding that this is hopefully not going to be the best film, that I ever make. It's hopefully going to be the worst film that I ever make. You know what I mean? And that they just keep getting better and better. And so I really didn't want to do the thing with the first feature where people go in and they're like, this is my life's movie. It's just this like super laden, very heavy thing. And I wanted to make something light and fun, and that, emphasize the aspects of the immigrant experience that you see all these, especially first features, indie features, that are like these kind of sad sack coming of age autobiographical stories. And I kind of wanted to tell the story of myself and kind of show this team of people's distinct and unique kind of voices, but in a way that emphasized the underseen and the kind of the weirdness, the liminal space, and like all the kind of I think just the strangeness and the surprising kind of humor that comes, as well as like kind of all the alienation and loneliness from being cast adrift in American society, which is really what this story is about.
Yeah, I thought the tone was definitely kind of nice and fun, and so in the sense that I mean, I think any of us kind of can feel alone or adrift at different points in time, but the looking at those, communing with those emotions when it's kind of wrapped in a little bit of humor always makes it a little bit more kind of a fun ride. So you kind of mentioned this idea of it kind of being this, indie film and trying to kind of work within the resources that you have. I mean, I imagine, like filming a road trip or, kind of simulating a road trip, can be a little bit challenging. Was there something about that was there kind of an improvisational nature that you kind of brought, or was everything very kind of, scripted and kind of choreographed, or what was the kind of approach there?
Yeah, I mean, originally I'd wanted to actually shoot it as a road trip and just be kind of on the road and shooting as we went. And I think we quickly realized that the logistical ask was a little bit intense I mean, we only had the equipment for 2 weeks. And so with days off, you can't work people 2 weeks straight. We had 12 shoot days. And so we shot the whole movie in 12 days. And so we're thinking about like ways to work with the script that I had. And so, a lot of it was really about this geography of nowhere and like how you can go all the way up and down the East Coast in America and still see the same kinds of things, this placelessness and this, again, this kind of atomization and kind of like you get this real kind of, I think, an existential feeling the longer you meditate on the kind of vast empty roads of the American highway system. And so it was how do we capture that feeling within what we're able to do. And so we've ended up shooting most of it around where I grew up in Raleigh, Durham. And
Hmm.
it was actually ended up being this amazing experience because we got access to all of these places. I think that it would normally have been otherwise so hard. I mean, so now I'm based in New York, and we run into this all the time with productions in New York where, it's like you go to a little bodega in the middle of nowhere, corner store, and you're like, hey, can I shoot in here? And you turn into a piggy bank for people in New York. It's like, well, how much are you going to pay me? And and back home in North Carolina, it's like, oh, you're shooting an indie movie. Like, that's so exciting. Like, how can I help? Like, what can we give you? How can I get involved? It's like the circus is coming to town. And it was, I think that kind of vibe and the spirit is really, you really feel it. I mean, Sophie's house in the movie, for example, we just flyered a neighborhood that I used to live in Durham. We like just put letters in about 100 mailboxes like, hey, this is my story. I used to go to school around here, coming back to shoot a movie. Would you be open to letting us film in your house? Like, we can't give you anything except like, the satisfaction of knowing that you helped an indie film. And we got some responses and we ended up choosing one of the houses. And, the film was just, the story was like that, I mean, I think I should mention, I don't know if this is kind of emphasized in the documents or the description or whatever, but my mom is the lead. She's a first time actor. She plays Jody. My dad is in this. He's the motel employee. I've managed to put my two grandmas, if you can find them, in there. My wife produced this. I mean, this is really like also part of a huge part of this was too just figuring out like, the kinds of movies that I love and that I watched making this and continue to watch. And yeah, it's not the kind of movies that you see in the American cinema, definitely not, Hollywood films, and it's part of this film was us figuring out like, how can we make a movie like this within the American context? Like, how can we put something like this together? How can we distribute this? And I think we found this really special way to kind of put it all together. Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't realize that that was your mom. I think I just had read a log line somewhere. I was like, oh, I want to see that movie, and watched it, and it's like, okay, yeah, this would be great for the festival. So I guess that raises two questions. The first one would be is that as you were writing the script, did you know that you wanted to kind of cast your mom there, or at what point in time did you know that you wanted to involve your mom?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I'd written again, like I was trying to write specifically and develop the story in a way that I knew that we could very easily very easily shoot it, and so characters and places that I was familiar with. And so I'd written this character of my mom because I was like, this is, she has so much like kind of contradictions in her life experience that she would just be really interesting at the center of the story. And but there's so much range in the character that I'd never considered she could do it. And I had actually auditioned some actors. I had an actor lined up in New York who was interested in the project, and it was actually making a fundraising video for the film when I was down in North Carolina, and I just asked my mom to be in the little teaser for the a fundraiser video basically, and people just loved her in it. It was a fun experience making it, and people kept asking me like, when are we going to see the movie with your mom in it? And that was really when I started thinking like, oh, like that could, we could actually do it maybe. And then I kind of like floated it with her, and she was like interested, willing, able to take time off work. And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of grew in love with the idea, because you know, she's a middle-aged Indian lady who's my actual mom. You know, she looks like what that it conjures in your head. But those kinds of people don't lead films. You know, not in India, not in America. I've never seen that. You know, they are usually supporting characters at best. You know, like trying to like get the main character into an arranged marriage, or like yelling at them in the background. You know, and it's like, but these people have subjectivity. I mean, they're incredibly interesting. Immigrants in general are such an interesting group of people. I mean, who, like, imagine giving up everything you know in the middle of your adult life, you know, and moving to a country whose cultures and language you have nothing to you have no point of reference for, and trying to raise your kids there. I mean, it's insane. And you know, I thought that would be really exciting to kind of to put her there and see how that went. And to my surprise, I think she really does have a kind of a natural talent for it. I think
Yeah.
we had to, you know, as with all first time actors, yeah, and I call them first time actors, you know, not non-actor, because clearly she's acting her butt off. But
Right.
I think with each of these actors, you have to kind of have to find a new process. The advantage with trained actors is that there's this kind of common language that you can speak, but with non-actors, you kind of find little tricks.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So just because I'm sure that some folks in the audience are like, were you trapped? So outside of knowing what she could bring to the screen, was there any trepidation of like, obviously any sort of kind of parent-child relationship in the sense of like, you're the director on set, so in the sense that I don't know what your relationship is like off screen, but like, how did you kind of like set the framework for that to be successful, that you would be the director, but at the same time, obviously she has her own lived experience that she's bringing to the story too. So yeah, what was the filmmaking process like with her? And obviously it turned out great for the film, but yeah, behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. I mean, you'll see in the movie, obviously, that there's this high eight camera that figures in the story, and that we use kind of high eight footage. And it's like literally my family's old camcorder that we did find in the closet. And, you know, when we weren't shooting movie stuff with it, we were just shooting behind the scenes. And so there's this whole other kind of B story. Maybe one day I'll go into the material where you can see me working with my mom. But I tried to have a really, really light touch with directing the actor, because I knew that the film production itself technically was going to be so demanding. You know, it's like if you've never done a film shoot before, you know, just to dive into doing a feature film is a pretty, it's, you know, diving into the deep end to say the least. But that too, an indie feature film in the summer in North Carolina. I mean, just the heat alone for like a woman of that age and doing take after take. I mean, so I knew we kind of knew going into it that was going to be tough. And so, you know, and so much of the film, you know, the collaborations we approached with the sense that this is going to be like, we're preparing to do kind of like a punk rock show. You know, it's not like, I'm not like, this is not a symphony orchestra where I'm standing there with my tuxedo and making sure every last thing is right. You know, we have a script. I've hired you because I trust in you and your vision and what you're bringing to the table. And listen, we have 11 days to shoot this. And so it's going to be rock and roll. And so I'm going to give you like a little bit of context, and then I'm going to trust you to do your thing. And so the way that I approached working with her character was like that, where it was like, you know, I cast you because you are this person. I don't need you to act. And the more that I could kind of get into the heart of each scene for her, I think she had a natural kind of ability to tune things out around her.
Mm.
And I was just kind of, so part of the little tricks that we played was that she never got the full script. She didn't even know what the movie, really the whole plot of it, until it was at a film festival. She would get her pages the morning every day. and part of that was just to allow her to just respond as she is to what's going on, and to kind of like absolve the responsibility for her to act.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I think it was a really organic kind of, and that was something we had to find. I mean, like, speaking of working with non-professionals, like, I remember we did, like, and we structured the shoot too, to where, my mother's shoot days in the beginning were kind of her more nonverbal, less demanding scenes, and by the end we were shooting pages and pages of arguments, that kind of thing. And we had to kind of ease into it, and I think there was a breakthrough, I think, on day one, where she had a few lines, and she's kind of like trying to hit the lines, and you could see her kind of doing the work on camera. And I just had to kind of go between the takes and be like, listen, what are you trying to do here? Right? You have a good memory. You're incredibly, like, she's like, can, like, just look at pages and remember lines. It's like, you more or less will get these. Don't worry about the order. Don't worry about the exact words. It's like, what are you trying to do? And once I was able to kind of just explain, like, that's the decoding work that you're doing here, then you kind of have the key to each scene. And I think that worked pretty well. I think that there was, like, enough of a new challenge every day with, like, the heat and the production and new scenes, that I was able to kind of, like, maintain my authority until the very last day. And it's actually caught on camera. uh when we had, like, an actual, like, that was the one and only, luckily it was saved until the last day. And she was getting a little bit too comfortable. I think she was, like, a little bit mastered the process a little bit too much, and she started trying to run the set a little bit, and that was a bit of fun.
Well, very cool. Well, you've made a really fun film, and is so happy to have as SF Indie Fest. What's the best way for people to continue to kind of follow your work or follow the film if they want to kind of spread it out there
Yeah.
into the work and social media?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I'm excited to play in San Francisco. I lived briefly in San Francisco, and I was working for Mother Jones magazine. So
Oh, wow.
it's really, I love the city, and yeah, my next film actually is set in the Bay Area, which we're developing now. So very excited to play with you guys. You can catch more about the film, keep up on upcoming screenings, dates, releases, links like that at hanlmovie.com. That is the movie website. And if you just Google my name, you'll find me on the web. I'm on all the socials and all that. So
Well,
thanks so
awesome.
much.
Well, cool. Well, we'll look forward to welcoming you to the Bay Area with your next film, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. I'm really looking forward to it.